Hello from the National Farm Machinery Show. I'm visiting with FMC and I have with me Nick Hustedde. And first of all, Nick, tell me what you do for the company.
Sure, it's good to talk to you again, Chuck. I work in tech service, so kind of in between research and sales. We do help our retail market managers out doing meetings, stuff like that, and if there's any issue in the field, we get involved, and we also kind of do some research as well.
Well, we want to talk on the subject of effective disease management and protection. Something very important, something that FMC has been very involved in, especially with some new products. Tell me a little bit about this new fungicide you got, for example.
Sure, so we're launching Lucento this year. We received federal registration in December. We're still waiting on some of those key states to kind of trickle in. In terms of my territory, Illinois is a go. We're still waiting on Indiana. But it's a premix of flutriafol, which is our in-house triazole chemistry, one of the most systemic and longest-lasting triazoles in the market. It's premixed with bixafen, which is a new SDHI molecule that we've been developing for the past couple years. So putting those two actives together, really doing a nice job on the disease spectrum and helping us practice resistance management.
Talk a little bit about the crops that it's available to be used on, and especially when it comes to corn, some of the trials that you've had.
Yeah, so it's labeled in corn, soybeans, wheat, sugar beets, and peanuts. Of course, in my territory, we're focusing more on corn, soybeans, and wheat. But in terms of the trials that we had in corn this past season as well as previous years, it's a really effective material on gray leaf spot. So you may have heard us in the past refer to gray leaf spot being the disease of the year in 2018. And certainly there's a lot of areas in the Midwest where we had some hotbeds. And one thing we have to think about is that where we had pressure this past season, that inoculum is going to be around for probably 2 years. So certainly as we're making our disease management plans, we've got to factor that into the scenario.
Well, and another one in corn that I've learned a little bit about here just today is Thar Spot. Do I have that right?
Correct, yeah, so that's a pathogen that we first started dealing with in 2015. A lot of our plant pathologists thought it would come in late enough that it wouldn't be a problem, and we certainly agreed with that, but I've heard 2018 being referred to as Tarmageddon. We just had an earlier infection that happened in some of the more northern growing areas. For my territory, northern Illinois, heard of issues in Wisconsin, northern Ohio, as well as in Michigan. And one of the interesting things about Thar Spot, it originates in the higher altitudes of Central America. So in that area, there's two organisms that come together to form a yield loss. And in the States, our plant pathologists have only identified Phyllocora, which is one of those organisms that's present in Mexico, but we don't have the Monagrophila organism yet, but we're still seeing a yield loss, right? And so our plant pathologists are currently trying to figure out if that Phyllocora organism is capable of causing a yield loss on its own, or maybe it's interacting with a different pathogen like gray leaf spot to form that yield loss.
How about in soybeans? I know you've got plenty of trial data on that. How's that looking?
So in soybeans, our sweet spot is going to be frog eye leaf spot. It's good on the disease spectrum, but certainly there's a lot of hype around frog eye because of the strobilurin resistance that a lot of growers are dealing with. So it's moving north. Normally we think of it as being more frequent in the Mid-South, but certainly we had issues in Iowa, northern areas of Illinois, as well as into northern Indiana, Ohio, and certainly caused some issues in that regard.
So looking at this year, things like seed quality and potentially more wet weather like we seem to be having more frequently, how does the products you have really play a key role for growers dealing with that situation?
Yeah, so this year in a lot of areas we did have a delayed harvest, right? And when you have those mature plants that are standing and you get continual fall moisture, it opens the door to a lot of fungal pathogens as well as kind of continues the cycle for maybe frog eye leaf spot. And so we had a lot of diaporth, Phomopsis seed decay, things like that came in later this season. And as we utilize those fungicides that have long residual, such as Lucento, we can protect those pods as well as the leaf area and influence that seed quality. Another thing we talk about is insect pressure. So we had a lot of bean leaf beetles, things like that were scraping on the pod walls, some stink bugs that were also feeding on those seeds. So if you have the pressure, it's important to think about what the insects are doing out there and employing an insecticide in combination with a fungicide if the pressure's there.
So how about a comment just in terms of what Lucento can do in terms of yield, quality, and one of the ingredients in there, I think of the triafol, if I said that right. What makes that unique?
So flutriafol is, again, our in-house triazole chemistry, but really sets it apart is its residual activity, so it lasts very long and it's very mobile in the plant. So when we think about managing diseases throughout the season, we've got to have that residual component. And like I mentioned, as you get those diapore type organisms that come in later, that particular product shined in a lot of trials as it relates to seed quality.
So having a combination of ingredients, we'll say, is better, and how is it? What makes that a better product?
Exactly. So what we focus on quite a bit is resistance. So we've got a fair amount of QI resistance or strobilurin resistance happening, particularly in our frog eye leaf spot, Septoria brown spot, target spot, and soybeans. We got to think about employing different sites of action in order to effectively manage those pathogens. And so really what Lucento brings to the table is a group 7 and a group 3, allowing us more consistency across the disease cycle because we are getting preventative and curative activity out of that premix, as well as helping us practice resistance management, keep our tools effective for a longer period of time.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Nick. He's been speaking about a new product, Lucento, that's available for growers this year. And here from National Farm Machinery Show, I'm Chuck Zimmerman reporting.